Well, what's happening, guys? Brady from Pathmaker Productions, out in the front yard today, out in the Great White North here. -6. It's a wee bit brisk, but people have been asking me to do a walk around on the Pathmaker, and I figured what better time than now to pull it out and give you guys a show. I did a walk around a few years ago, but I realized I was just talking about it, didn't actually show off a lot of the parts. So let's crawl around this thing, take a look, show you guys some of the random stuff that I did the hard way on this thing. I guess I've got one more problem, which is gonna lead to maybe not wheeling for a little bit, because as we all know, I like to spend an awful lot of time on the giggle pedal, right up in the catch-up. Well, got some bad news, gents. We're blowing bubbles, which is a surefire sign that the old head gasket in this girl is done. So, too much time being a meathead means I get to now replace the head gaskets. But I'll do a video about that, a future video, and we'll go over the head gasket jobber. The Pathmaker Rig is a 1987 Nissan Pathfinder VG30i SE, whatever the hell that means. It was a fully loaded Pathy when I bought it in 2001, and I bought it off a little old lady that had owned it and serviced it at the dealer from day one. So I literally have a folder of every single receipt from this vehicle. So I'm the second owner, and I've owned it for coming up on 20 years now, and she's a beaut. But we've done a few things over the years. First, I had some body lift, did a suspension lift, had some 35s on it. But if you run your Nissan hard with IFS, you'll start breaking T-bars, you'll start breaking steering, and all sorts of that. So it was time to sass the old girl. So I did the solid axle swap on this thing in 2009. At the time, a lot of guys were putting Dana 44s in their Nissans, but I believe I was the first to go 1-ton axles. I could see where the game was going. Tires kept getting bigger, so I skipped the middleman and went right into 1-tons. So what we've got in this thing is a Ford Kingpin Dana 60 out of a 1992 Ford. So inside the diffs, I've got Yukon 538 gears, and I've got the 35 spine chromo axles, inner and outer, and super joints. I've been running them since 2009. They've been super good for me. Haven't had any problems. You just got to keep them greased. I'm not a locker kind of guy, I'm a weld it kind of guy. So that diff is welded. There's a chunk of plate in between the spider gears, piece of 3/8, and then welded all the way around and send it. I've also got the Yukon hardcore lockout hubs, which quite frankly I rarely use because they're really hard to turn. That's probably the way I installed them, but either way, this is a trailer queen, so she spends a lot of time not running real far, so I just leave it in 4x4. Paz is wrecking shit right here and making a scene. Thanks, bud. I've also got some custom beadlocks on my American Racing 767 Steelies. Ooh, look at that clearance. Man, that's a PSC full hydro setup with an 8-inch ram and the Northwest Fab Dana 60 arms. And I'm running, in the front, I'm running leaf springs. They are 54-inch Chevys, which gets you the hole right there, which keeps the center of gravity nice and low, and it's a 7-leaf pack. I started with a 4-leaf pack and it was too soft, and I've slowly stepped up to running a 7-leaf pack at this point. You can see my bump stops. I'm running, these are stock Chevy Dorman ones that come off a lot of Chevys, and free 99 for my buddy John. Cheers, thanks buddy. And Bilstein 5100s, 5125s. And you can see my super minty island spec square tube front drive shaft, which is a cheap way of doing a drive shaft. But of course, I found out real quick at full stuff, I was hitting the frame on this side, and so I had to do a big notch in the frame, which is why I've got a big fish plate on this side. If you're ever doing fish plates, do them to a point, or else you'll make a weak spot on your frame. The front cross member is kind of hard to see. It's literally just a piece of 3x3 square tube with some notches cut in it for my spring hoops, and then, or sorry, my shackle where so I can run the bolts, and then my front bumper is welded into it, and which tucked in behind my front bumper. Run a worn 8274 steel Haas on it, and I just got this little dinky shackle the other day from Princess Auto. It's actually for the cheap finder for hauling logs around here. Also got my super sweet Baja design LED lights. They're badass. They're super expensive, and you get what you pay for. So stoked on those things. Under the hood, like I said, I've got a full PSC set. So here's my cooler, my reservoir. It's up as high as I can get it underneath the hood, nice and greasy. And the cooler is actually in behind my half-ass grill. Ooh, look at that. Look at where I dropped that screw, and it's just pushing into the rad down there. That's beauty. I'll have to get that out before I puncture a hole in it. You can see when you don't really do any maintenance, your shit's really ghetto. I've also got a remote oil filter, which is really nice to have when you're running headers. I've got Doug Thorley headers on it, and it's real hard to get to the oil filter. As we know, I said VG30i. This thing was a TBI. I've done an EFI swap on it. This is the EFI off a 95 Pathfinder. So end up with the plenum and a bunch of stuff. I've also happened to have the 4x4parts.com aggressive cams in this thing, and it's been bored 50 over and high compression, running 10-to-1 compression, yada yada yada. Of course, the high compression is part of the problem with my goddamn head gasket. Where she goes. And with the OneTons, you need a four-wheel disc master. So this is one off a 1965 Corvette, which costs like 35 bucks. Brand spanking new. Comes with a reservoir. It's a good one if you're swapping to something that needs four-wheel disc brakes. You can also see down here, I welded some chains on my motor mounts. They don't like to flex that much, but you put the chain there with a little bit of slack in it, and it allows the motor to flex, but not flex too far and break the polyurethane. So they're holding up really good. And as you can see, Thorley headers. And there's my PSC steering. I'm also running a 170 amp Chevy 3-wire alternator. It was like 80 bucks, and 3 times the power that you get out of a stock Nissan belt, or stock Nissan alternator. As I'm talking here, I'm shutting up because I'm looking at that belt is cracked to hell. So apparently I should replace my alternator belt. Oh, and apparently I should also tighten my radiator fan. This is a Ford Taurus 2-speed fan, and 2700 CFM on high. Super low profile, comes with a shroud. It gives me a lot more room to work rather than the stock clutch fan that comes on the VGs. I'm gonna climb underneath here. Oh, okay. What we've got under here is a flat belly custom belly pan that I made, and above it I've got the stock Nissan trans to a Nissan TX10, and then I have the Northwest Fab doubler with the Dana 300 bolted in behind it, and This is Dana 300 number 5. So I was really hard on them. So by this point I've got 32 spline rear output, 32 spline front output, and I got this big gnarly truss on the thing which hold both sides of the case together. And of course I also made a new cover for the top instead of just the stamped steel. It's been holding up good since I did those new mods to it, so hopefully she'll stay together. You can see my sweet linkage that I made for my Dana 300. Let's take a minute to appreciate all of my bitchin' clearances here. We're rubbing on tire there. We're bottomed out there. Touching the frame there. But close counts, boys. Close counts. Looking good. Now I got a MagnaFlow muffler, and the exhaust dumps out right there, which works okay. Had to jump it to the passenger side because of my Dana 300 running down this side, so had to run it on the other side. Look at how much grease I got on there. Good job, B. Custom drive shaft made for my buddy Royce at ITC. Thanks, Royce. Minty. It's 3/16 DOM, so it's beefy. And as you can see, it spent a lot of time rubbing on the rocks. And in the rear here, oh, and I got my traction bar, which hangs just slightly lower than this, and shackles at this end. Nice rusty shit. It works pretty good. My rig doesn't hop that bad for leaf springs, quite frankly. And I've also, in the rear, I'm running, that's a 14 bolt from who the hell knows, Chevy. It's actually a 13 bolt. You can see I shaved the bottom bolt, the bottom lip off of there. We also threw it in the barbecue and got her nice and hot. Welded up the tubes on it. I threw some disc brakes on the bad girl, and it's also got 5/3/8 and the Orb of Power welded diffs. If you know 14 bolts, you know what I'm talking about. And those are 3-inch wide Ford rear springs. It doesn't matter what year they are, they're all the same. 3-inch wide rears. And I'm running 5100 Bilsteins in the rear as well. You can also see some of the stuff that I cut out. I had some rot in the floor up here. New cross member that I made that's really ghetto. Big old piece of armor for my fuel tank, which is a plastic tank. And everything's tucked up pretty nice and tight here, except for the big oil pan. So yeah, as I said, I got the 13 bolt, the shaved aftermarket cover. And people ask me about these hooks all the time. Those are just to strap it down to my trailer, so I don't have to wrap the chain around and worry about my brake lines, even though, as we all know, I wreck a lot of brake lines. Obviously the brake lines I ran myself because they're ugly. Shackles I made myself. This rear bumper is an air tank. You can see the gauge right there and the fitting right there, but I don't have my onboard air attached anymore because my intake is in the way, so it's just not a tank anymore. Well, it is still a tank, but there's no way to pressurize it. You can see this is that boat tank. It fits minty between the frame rails there. It's backup lights. My fuel pump's down here on the frame rail. It's, I don't know, some sort of 1,000 horsepower fuel pump. I got a filter there. And you can see I trimmed the rear fender wells quite a bit. Front were trimmed all the way back to the door. But that's what you need when you're gonna try to tuck 42s. Tires are 42-inch Iroks, 42 by 14 R17s. They've been decent tires to me, but I will be going into a sticky tire when I get new tires. The sticky tires are just a hell of a lot better for giving you traction on the slippery rocks. Inside this thing, I've got these seats are out of a early 90s Toyota Supra. You end up having to do some modifying of the rails and whatnot so they don't directly bolt in, but they have a lot more support than the stock Nissan seats. And also my shoulder straps can go through the wide gap in the headrest, which is super nice. This thing's pretty stripped down. I've got no carpet in it, obviously. I just lost the glovey, which kind of sucks. All of this stuff is just for show. You can see my shifters. This is my TX10 Nissan shifter. These are my Dana 300 front and rear. How do I know that? Because I have it written right here. Otherwise I wouldn't remember. And in here I got my power panel. Apparently I've only got 12 volts in my battery. And some of my switches. I guess I should turn my winch off. Just not using it. Some aftermarket little steering wheel. And that's the gauge cluster from the 95 that I tucked into the square dash. Just it was easier that way. None of the gauges really work anyways, except for temp and the tack, which are really the only ones that are important. Okay, so I mount my GoPro under the old back seat. I built a toolbox, and then these are the old seat backs, which recline. So I've got some levers, and I got space underneath here for the jumper cables, socket set, first aid kit, my Optima's under the other side there, and then I got a ton of fluids as well, and other random spares under the seat. I run tool bags because I don't like hard case as much. For tools, it's a lot easier to be in there. They're not strapped down right now, but keep behind the seat. My my fire extinguisher bolted there so I can reach it from the driver's seat. I should probably renew it. The damn toolbox, I built it a little bit too tall for anybody except my dog. So I cut out the headliner to try to give us a little more head space, but yeah, it's still pretty short. Spun it around so you can see it in the back a bit easier. That hump is there for the shocks. I set that radius up there so I could put a spare tire in here, and then I never ended up carrying a spare tire in here. I run my 48-inch high lift, case for camera gear, and then I've got another ammo can, which is full of my winch remote, my snatch block, my other shackles, and stuff like that. And then I got the cage, which is 7 sticks of poo pipe. People are gonna freak out. Oh my god, it should be DOM! Nope, Sked 40, kids. I got the JD square bender with the Sked 40 die, and I bent this all up, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. It's the first cage I ever built from scratch, and 12 years later, seems to take a pretty decent beating. So I went with the lots of bends mode of doing a cage, and I have 13 bends in my B-pillar hoop, which is why it's so nice and tight to the body. And I got the sweet roll bend in my door bar because they used to run straight across, and then it got bent that far in, and I cut it, flipped it, welded it on so it could climb in there. The cage is getting a little bit beat on these days. I had to put the roll bar for the GoPro on the front after crushing a gimbal up there on a day of wheeling, but it's not bad flex for a shitty old leaf spring car. Oh, look at this, I chickened out. I could have driven up another foot. I think that's the majority of the parts on this thing. Like I said, I've owned it for 20 years, bought it in 2001. So I've owned it more than half my life now, and it's always a work in progress. Like I said, I'm gonna have to do a head gasket on the thing. I'm not ready to do a VK swap or stuff like that because that's quite a fresh motor. It probably has 1,000 hours of runtime on it. Mind you, we all know how I like to run. So I'm a little hard on my stuff, but we'll get it fixed back up and we'll get it back out. So if you got any comments or questions about Nissan Pathfinders, leave a comment in the video, and I like to respond to every comment. So tell me I suck. Tell me I'm a terrible fabricator. I don't really care. I just like to be out here having fun. So if you're building one of these rigs, good on you. get her done. Go beat on it. Post some videos up. Let's see it. Anyways, I'm gonna go pull this hunk of junk back in the shop and start tearing it down. I'll do some videos while I'm tearing into it. I've also got some more work to do on the cheap finder, and it's just a shitty time of year to be fabbing on stuff. It's a little bit chilly out here. Right, Puzz? Before you judge me on the dog coat, his grandma bought it for him, and she likes it. So give me a break. He seems stoked on it. Carhartts for everyone. Cheers, boys.